Next up on Reel Talk, we got Paul Constable. Hey, y'all, I'm Asante, and this is Reel Talk. On today's episode, we are speaking with Paul Constable. Paul.
Constable, if you're watching from Quebec.
Thank you. You can already tell this is going to be a good one. Paul, for the members out there that may not know you, can you share a little bit about yourself? I mean, your history as an actor, your connection to the union, and potentially these topics.
Yeah, I've actually been with ACTRA, I think, close to 30 years. My final credit was on when the Comedy Network launched, and I played a pig in the Three Little Pigs sketch, Hold for Applause. And from that, I was at Second City, which, of course, is theater. But the Second City work, I think, led to me getting into a lot of commercial work. And then some, hopefully you still remember me as Gary, the Canadian Tire guy, which I did for 10 years. And then we were locked out, which is actually one of the reasons that I did run for council, was to just try and affect some kind of change, because a 2.5-year lockout is insane.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, cool. And
I guess, I mean, I am the actor treasurer.
I was going to say, I believe you hold a pretty...
yeah, if we need to get some stuff later, we can probably make that work. No, we can't totally do that. But yeah, so it's been interesting. If you want to talk council, I will talk council, and I know we want to talk about a lot of things.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely dive into a lot, especially with your role as treasurer. I think there's a lot of great stuff to take a look at there. The first thing I'd like to tackle, just something basic, something simple, so that everyone can kind of be on the same page as far as we're concerned. There's an acronym that we're using right now with the IPA bargaining process to kind of just help folks really understand the major points. That acronym, AIR. Can you speak a little to that?
Well, I tried to push for Air Bud, but no one would go for it. I thought, we're your buds. Air.
Could be copyright issues there.
Yeah. I'm the treasurer.
Listen.
AI, of course. AI in air. We got artificial intelligence. The I can stand for inflation.
Right.
The R can stand for residuals. And the inflation and residuals, I think, is something that we're probably going to focus on, and I today.
Yeah.
But we can talk about any of this stuff. A can also stand for like accessibility. Are these workplaces accessible to all? Even in terms of being in a workplace, we've talked about things like, what if you have a new mother on set with their baby? Can they find a place for some privacy? So we've chatted about a lot of things during this whole bleed up bargaining process. And AIR seemed like the best acronym to capture it all.
Amazing. Well, yeah, it's great. And it's really a helpful mnemonic tool.
My alternate is a dog, though, that can do anything, which is why Air Bud I thought would work.
I see. So the trust of actors' funds could easily be handled by a canine.
Yeah.
So what you're saying.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I guess I am. Which, probably true.
Well, let's without further ado, let's dive into it, man. The residuals, inflation, the money situation for us at ACTRA as well as our membership. What's going on?
Well, I mean, in terms of residuals, a big thing that we're looking at right now are just the streamers. And I prior to coming to this, I went to our Performers magazine, which fortunately came out in email form. I don't know.
Yes.
Probably a lot of you remember getting those magazines in the mail. But now it's in an email form. You can always find it online. And this one was about the residuals, specifically streaming residuals, and how, if you go back in time to like when VHSs came out, and then DVDs came out, and then Blu-rays came out, and the unions had to find a way to catch up to how do we pay the performers that are now not just in the movie, but now they're in your living room. So with streaming, the example they use in the article, which I think is still a good example to use, is the show Suits. And I think people know Suits is Canadian, a lot of Canadian performers on it. Their other show, Billions, became this very popular show, and the algorithm sent a lot of people to the show Suits. And Suits became the most watched show in 2023. And I know this because I read it in Performers Magazine, to be found online anywhere. But there was no residual process in place. If you and I were in that.
Yeah.
How do we get paid? I think the answer is we don't.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have this part you probably should check whether I think we're allowed to talk about this, but we have concepts on how to approach these residuals, in the same way that we have, you and I can kind of figure out, what am I going to get paid if I'm an actor in a show because I can go back to the charts that exist. These are the rates that exist. We're just trying to find rates that are fair.
Yeah.
So that if your show does come back and hits the air, even 10 years later, do you deserve to get paid? And what amount should that be? And can we find the right amount that the producers and the performers both feel comfortable with?
Well, that's it, right? And I mean, perhaps I'm a little biased as an actor, but personally, I think absolutely you should get paid. That's your image, it's your talent, you know? I mean, and any time that it airs, that it shows up in people's living rooms, you ought to receive some form of compensation for that, in my opinion.
100%. I mean, and I feel like the producers will kind of push back on this. There's always this weird disconnect where I feel like producers think we're just doing this for fun, even though like it's when they need you, they're your best friend,
right?
And then when you're a problem, you're just a problem. It's like I'm dating a bunch of different producers. Can we go for this place to dinner? Can we? And you'll pay for it. Is that okay? And then they're like, oh yeah, I guess you really like me. And the next day it's like, I don't need you.
Yeah, we're good.
But yeah, like it is always kind of mind-boggling that the producers love to tout how much money they made.
Yeah, that they gross on a film or a project, of course.
But they don't want to spread it down to the so-called little people, for lack of a better term. Little people being, and it can be a lead in Suits.
100%.
If that show was, I think it ran, I don't know, 6 or 7. I don't know.
I think it was 7.
Yeah, like they didn't get any money either. So it wasn't just like the guy who had the day player part, or the lady who was in 3 episodes. No one got anything except the producers or the company, the Netflix company, which I would happily appear in anything though. Seriously, even if it doesn't work out.
Paul, I doubt they're going to be watching this, but that's okay.
I hope they are. I hope this appears on Netflix. I hope we get a deal.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe you, me, Harry, and Meghan.
We could soak up some of those corporate dollars, couldn't we?
Yeah, she was in Suits.
That right? Yeah. Look at her now.
Where's the royal family on this? Actually, that's
probably very distant.
Meghan and the royals aren't doing so.
Yeah. So moving on.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think one of the things that kind of strikes a personal chord with me is around fees and payments and such, and it is something that I think it should be very transparent for actors. And it's like, I like what you say. It's like there should be a place, and there is a place where you can go and you can check those rates so that you know that you're getting fairly compensated.
I used to do that early in my career when I get a commercial and like, you remember when you get scale and then you get scale and half and you get double scale.
Right, let's go.
And I would get out the calculator and be like, what does this mean?
For sure. Well, I mean, like any other job, you get a breakdown of this is your salary.
Yeah.
And I think the same ought to be true for actors because, look, I mean, I think the really interesting thing is this, and I think this is one of the major misconceptions, like you were talking about how, how not a lot is known about exactly the actor's lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think one of the first questions to ask is, how are actors doing with inflation? With like, what is the average actor making? Are they able to make a living? How is that looking these days?
I mean, I am not a great example due to my history of the spokesperson decade, but prior to that, I was a good example of the struggle of the working actor in the sense that, when I was a kid, I thought, okay, I'll get into TV and then I'll get into movies and then I'll be famous and then I'll have a mansion. It was not a solid plan. But you move to the city, you realize the city is expensive. It's only getting more and more expensive. Shout out to my grandmother for letting me live in Scarborough, Kennedy, and Eglinton. Am I right? No frills all the way. I had to work at a bank for 3 years and struggle and like take classes and meet other people and go in for that 2-line audition, get back on the subway and hope the boss didn't notice you were gone for 90 minutes. And that's the life of the actor. That's this like just kind of grabbing a check here and a check there and hoping that at the end you've made this pyramid of money so that, at the end of the year, you're not like, I still have a roof over my head.
Right. Yeah.
And probably still thin though, which is great for television because you can't afford food. You can only afford one or the other.
So there are some upsides.
Yeah. So, and I mean, and even the people that and you've been in this business long enough that start off and they come in hot. Let's say they get something big right out of school.
Absolutely.
Or they're child actors that have been on a series. In Canada especially, but I mean, it just can stop and you can be that flavor of the month or the year.
Yes,
and then it's like, I can't get anything anymore. The industry isn't totally big enough here to sustain. I feel like for lack of a better term, like a star system. A star system. Anyways, that's my long answer to just say the regular working actor is a constant struggle. And especially now in this day and age, I think I'm so glad I'm not coming out of school right now, because I don't know where I would live in this city, because the rents are just, I guess I'd have 5 different roommates, you know?
Yeah, you'd have to have a slew of roommates.
Yeah.
And oh man, well, I
hope they're all writers. I love hanging out in a writer's room.
Yeah, so I hear this term precarious worker, and I think that, it really resonates with me. Because yes, just that is, the work can quite suddenly stop. Not to mention the fact that there's so much unpaid work that actors do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I guess you're talking, I mean, auditions in and of themselves are just unpaid processes where, I mean, I had one, I mean, well, I know this is airing whenever it airs, but the one I had yesterday, lucky to get a Zoom audition, but you know, the hour prior, I'm just sitting there, I was for a judge, and I'm just like redoing that over and over and over again, so that when I have that, and I only got one shot at it, and fortunately it went kind of okay, but like, because you do only get one shot at it.
Yeah.
You really do. And so you have to put all that, you have to go to the plate and hit a home run every time on an audition. You can't get a single, you can't get a double, you can maybe get a triple if there's callbacks. But you can't miss. And so you have to put in the work. Now, there are some people that I hate, because they're really good at just like being instinctually really good at auditions.
Yes.
And they have like that like photographic memory and all that stuff. But even that, it's still work. It's still a craft. It's still like everything we're doing. And then it is unpaid. And that's why I think, to go back to even just like the scale of pay that we get, always feels like not enough.
Yeah, because it doesn't take into consideration those many, many hours that we spent, whether it was in film school or it was in, classes, or even just the prep that we did to get.
The Fringe show that was in like Sudbury.
Yes. Yeah. We've all had one of those.
But it's a learned experience. You get better by doing. And and I mean, I heard when COVID hit of just these nightmare audition processes of like, we need to learn how to look like we can bake a cake. And so they had to set it up in their kitchen, and they had to put on like a specific outfit, and they had to spend like 3-4 minutes. But I mean, you get one take. Not everyone is an editor either.
Yeah.
So this world of the self-tape, I mean, sometimes that self-tape for a 30-second scene takes an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because
setup,
you're just not getting the energy, and you know it. And it's
Well, that's one of the major complaints right now is actors saying, we are being asked to do more and more and more. And yet it's simply just for an audition.
The good news is the pay stayed the same. It's zero.
Yeah,
but, so I mean, you can't complain that it went down.
This is true.
Although actually in a way it did go down, because you had to buy your...
Well, now you're actually paying.
Yeah, you're paying to get your camera, your lights,
backdrop.
Got to get a nice microphone.
Got to get a nice mic.
And then you got to like figure out how to edit and all that.
Sure. And then you're calling in friends for favors, right?
I even take it back. We have actually gone down. It's the pay went down.
So so in response to that, I've had some friends who would say,
drop them. Whatever they're about to say, just drop them as friends. I disagree.
They're your friends too.
Oh, okay. Actually, well, they may be 2 less friends by the end. No. Okay. All right. What do they say?
Well, they say things that might seem radical, as in we should get paid for auditions. That certain auditions shouldn't even exist. Some of this stuff that's for commercials, where it's like, really and truly, I mean, yeah, if you want to see how I bake a cake, like...
I you know what? I was just at a committee meeting where this was brought up. I'm getting paid for auditions, and I have to admit, in my old school brain, I was like, what? But I think there's a scenario here that might play out.
Okay.
Because we have this special world now of self-tape, 300 people can audition for the same part, and I think we know that not all 300 are being seen, and not the full, maybe 10 seconds from each spot, but even that takes up a lot of time. If we start paying actors, I think it depends on what you think is good or not. That will definitely then shrink. Maybe 30 people read for the part, maybe 10. However, if you are in that group of 10, you're in an elite group of what I guess the casting directors see as the strongest potential for this part versus just doing that. Like, I mean, I've read for guys with names that like I shouldn't be reading.
Yes. I've had a couple of Bobs in my day.
I think they were,
are we sure this is...
For me, like they might have been born in Mexico, and I'm like, why am I? Anyways, so they're just throwing everything at the wall, and like that could stop, but you'd be getting paid for it. It then could also cause a lot of actors to go, "Ooh, this isn't what I."
Well, they would lot less auditions.
Yeah.
A lot less. But I gotta say, I mean, personally, I'd rather go into an audition knowing that I'm actually in consideration. I'm actually going to be seen, and that my time is not being wasted. That means less auditions. I don't know, man. I got to say, I got to go in that direction.
I'll use another analogy, like a sports analogy. Some quarterbacks in the CFL played in the CFL because they could play, and they knew they could make more money being on a bench in the NFL, but they're like, I want to play. So it's like, now you're like, I know I can at least play, and I'm not just going to be a bench guy or the hot dog guy, way back. It's just like not even being considered to stand at the plate and hit that home run so I have a chance at winning this part. So yeah, I think it's a great question. I honestly think that the producers, especially the Association Québécoise de la Production Médiatique, that's a lot better. I took French immersion. We can do the next one in French. But yeah, I think that the producers will really, when people always say that they're going to push back on that. Well, some producers must have pushed back to go back to like the hair and makeup equity that we are starting to really push for. They must have pushed back super hard on that. Oh, well, what am I supposed to do? Go find someone who can do that? You're like, yes,
that's exactly what I'm asking.
Yeah. And then they did. And I think, not to stick up for a producer, but I'll maybe try and see their point of view. As I was joking earlier that we should just be happy to be working. Maybe from their own sense, they just see people that are happy to be working, that are so anxious to get where do I put my wardrobe? I brought my wardrobe. Yeah. Oh, there's my trailer. Yeah. And we're just like, I've got a day on this show. So they're like, well, they're always happy. They want to do it. They'll stick around for 17 hours. But then we don't work for another 8 months.
Exactly. They're mistaking our passion for the art. For being, my acting coach would always say, beggars in the system.
Yeah.
Which puts you at a huge disadvantage. And that's definitely something I'd love to see us kind of shift the narrative on. It is. Because you're right. I mean, without the actors, without the performers, you don't have a production. So why is that not taken into consideration in the way that we are treated and the way that we are respected? I think is
to go issue. And sorry to interrupt. To go back to the performers article that I read, which you can find online at ACTRA's website. It talked about how during the pandemic, the streaming industry just leapt. And part of that narrative, too, was where would we be without our creative people? Actors, of course, are part of that, but the writers, the tech people who are creating the sets and all this stuff, that if that was taken away, the pandemic was extremely difficult. Absolutely. But we turned back to these shows. I hadn't seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I blasted through that thing because we had time. We just had time, and we needed laughter to kind of ignore the pain.
It was a beautiful balm for the soul. Man. Well, and so there is a topic that I'd like to dive into a little bit as well.
As long as it's not thermodynamics, I'm ready for anything.
Shoot, that was. How did you know?
Well, I read the notes.
Yeah, well. So regarding, you talked about accessibility a little bit earlier, and I think that ties into what I wanted to dive into now, which is respect. Respect on set, things like accessibility. I've heard you say such eloquent things about diversity and celebrating equity from your personal standpoint.
Well, I also feel like I'm not totally the right person to talk about this, but I will do my darndest.
That aside,
but it is an observed experience. And at the start of this council year for me was I went to this event called Primetime, and this was in Ottawa. And I went to a hair and makeup, workshop for people of color, and even something as simple as that, like me learning that a black woman will wake up at 4 a.m. to do their hair in a particular way that they want it done because it's and it's also been asked of them by the producers, or even just the talk about what is a Black person and how do we want them to look and act and behave, which I've kind of always been aware of, even in the 80s, where I definitely was very aware that a Black actor in a TV show was usually there to be like a crook of some kind. They were very rarely a lead, and you know what I mean? So like, it's such a slow culture shift, and I don't want to give away any like, we're gonna solve it, you know, with this go round. But we're constantly, so to go back to like the hair and makeup, and even the fact that they don't have Black people working with Black people. I'm the perfect example, even though I'm not a hair and makeup person. I wouldn't even know where to start, because I don't have that self-knowledge.
Yes.
You know, I guess the best I could do is shave another man's face. That might be the best I could do. So if you're looking for someone, but you know what I mean? So like, we are approaching, even in terms of accessibility, like, can everyone actually get to the set? Can we get someone into their trailer?
Yeah.
You know, and then if that is a problem, for lack of a better term, we then don't want to hire those people that will become the problem, because now we being the producers have to spend more money to take care of them. So the respect unfortunately isn't there. As you know, movie sets, TV sets, commercial sets are high level intensity.
Yeah.
And it feels like problems are happening, even just planes flying overhead, sunlight going behind a cloud. There's always that guy like, 6 more minutes until that cloud. I'm always like, how does that guy know? And what a just a weird job to get good at. But I guess they have a lot of other skills.
There's a job for everybody.
But so the respect really goes down, because everyone's just stressed out.
Yeah.
I will say this, like, and I mean, like, as the spokesperson, I kind of thought, okay, I'm the guy, like, and even after like doing it for years and years, I was like, I guess I'm the guy. And then there'd be times when I would go through something that I'm like, oh, if I'm not getting this level of respect, well, one guy came up to me and kind of explained how the shoot was going to work to me, and I have a French counterpart, and I just said, we've done 150 of these. But it was literally like, that's the camera, this is where you're going to stand, that's what these tape marks mean.
Film School 101.
And I was like, what? So, like, I say that if I can say, you know, in my white privilege, right, as this spokesperson, at the top of the chain, you're still getting people talking to you like a child. And I can't imagine what that's like for someone who doesn't have my history and can just go, like, I can fight back against that because I've been raised in a culture where I still get to get ahead, even when I'm a jerk, you know? I mean, that's always been, to talk about, I mean, it's so weird we're getting into these weeds, but like the respect for women, I remember early on you would hear about, this woman is difficult. This man stands up for what he believes in. And there was always this like disconnect, and it's still there. But I mean, and all the stuff I wanted in the agreement that would cover this, I'm kidding. It's such a big topic. You can't put this on a piece of paper and be like, solve it. But we are talking about it, and that's the exciting thing.
That's where it has to start.
Yeah.
Conversations have to start, you know, because I think in a lot of cases, it's just, you know, people are just unaware, or, you know, again, it's just because it's not their lived experience, they don't know. Yeah, for sure. But I'm loving some of the conversations that are being had. I'm loving some of the steps I'm seeing, like with the hair and makeup. They created a committee.
Yeah.
There's just lately a new partnership with CMU about getting a specific training program for BIPOC individuals.
Yes.
There you go. The conversation leads to action.
I sat as an alternate on a council. I don't remember the name of this man who was also an alternate, but he was a young Black man. And he pointed out to me, this is probably 15 years ago, that the discussion around the table, which was a simple enough discussion from my Caucasian heritage. He pointed out where he grew up, he didn't have drama in his school, because he grew up in a neighborhood where like you did not have that. You did not have access to a drama. Like, I took a city-run program, student theater, still running in Burlington. Shout out to Reiner. He's not listening, but anyway, he might be. If it's about him, he actually will listen, and I love you dearly. But that program, you know, I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian, you know, city. It's so great for me to go back and see that program now, see the diversity, And see the fact that like something as simple as you do, like, I mean, I'm not going to get it. I was in an all white version of The Wiz, in the 80s. So it wasn't all white, but it was 90% white. So, but I say that with like, we just were like, this should be okay. Why not? Yeah. And now when I go see like even these camp shows and I see like Aladdin, it's a diverse cast. Yeah. And so in that cast of Aladdin, that right person is playing that right part without makeup that's questionable. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the movement is slow, but it's happening. And also, to go back to my original point, there still is this divide in terms of just opportunity. Yeah. And I have to constantly remind myself of that. I mean, there's that great video of, I think it's like a sports coach where remember he tells everyone to take a step forward if you haven't done this or that. Maybe we won't, but you know what I mean? Yeah. That was an eye opener too, that like the white people were able to just go, I got this. And then you saw who was held back because of society, because of culture. And we constantly have to be aware of that.
Yeah. So this is something we're discussing with everybody because it's such a big topic, and I feel it just warrants discussion. It's great to hear different perspectives. AI,
yeah, wow, okay. I was the first artificial intelligence spokesperson, but that's just because my intelligence is non-existent.
Or artificial.
Yeah. AI scares the poop out of everyone, of course, and for good reason. I want to start with what I'm sort of hopeful about with AI that I've been reading about. I actually love this like tech podcasts and AI is really expensive, right. And it's really bad for the climate because something like every time, even like you use ChatGPT, like I think that amount of that water is like there's something connected to water. It's really bad, and they need these huge computer terminals, anyways, to use it.
The big mainframes, yeah.
So my hope is that it actually remains expensive for a very long time. So producers are just like, what's cheaper? Humans, which is a really weird way to say it, which almost sounds kind of really inappropriate. But it's sort of it's sort of what we want. So I mean, AI might, but I feel like eventually, like everything, like when you first saw those big flat screen TVs and they were $80,000, and now you get one for $500. That could start happening with technology. Two things that in terms of ourselves, what we're focusing on in this bargaining is actually introducing language that's never existed before, because AI hasn't existed before.
Good.
And are they questions like, do we need a minimum number of people on set like, do we need a minimum number of people with speaking lines? The stunt community, stunts. These are people that have trained their whole lives to do something that's actually quite awesome and cool. And we take it a lot for granted. And then if AI can just replace them like that, if I go back to that primetime event that I went to in Ottawa, which they brought in two speakers about AI. One guy seemed like a James Bond villain and I think scared everybody. But another man talked about working for a company that was just, he had no sympathy towards it because his company was just bought out and he lost his job in like 24 hours. Yeah. And it was scary because we as actors can lose our jobs. And when will that 24-hour cycle happen? Yeah. Where we just go, oh, it's done. It's done. Yeah. I think voice right now is a very precarious world because voice is just, we're hearing these AI-generated podcasts that, let's face it, probably sound better than this at times. How could they? Am I right?
I like to disagree.
I would disagree as well. But he could probably talk about thermodynamics. But like they sound real and they're just off enough at times that you're like, okay, but it's scary.
Getting scary close, yeah.
I feel at some point there will be the first AI celebrity. This like thing that just is a computer thing, but you're like, it's on podcasts, it's like it's in a movie, it's in a TV series. And it's not a thing, but everyone's just like, isn't this cool? It seems so real.
Oh, yeah.
So the other aspect of this, so the first aspect is, can we get language into our agreement that protects performers? And the other aspect we need to think about is going to governments, speaking to governments at the federal, provincial levels to put in laws, basically, protecting us. One of the ways we can probably do that is that if you want to do deep fakes of you and I, looking to do something criminal. That can get governments on board, I think, from all sides, because they're just like, well, we don't want that. Yeah. I don't want to look like I just robbed a bank or you know.
Yeah.
But so it's just AI is moving faster than society is to protect ourselves from it. I mean, even like, remember a year ago, they were like, we should just stop everything, which is a really weird thing to hear. Let's stop progress.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I just is unrealistic.
Unless you're on set, and I'm just kidding. No, let's stop progress. Stop hiring that. But you know what I mean? I'm hoping that the thing that's kind of exciting, I'm part of a bargaining team that is talking about AI for the first time. And then maybe 100 years from now, I'll be like, that's where it went wrong. Yes. Paul Constable. And I'll be like, sorry. But I should have played more Pac-Man as a kid. I think producers in and of themselves, because of the expense of it, we can find a common ground. I think we can, and I also think that, I mean, when you got into this, I'm sure you didn't get into this to be like, I want to sit in front of a computer. You want to interact with someone else.
It's about that divine interaction between two humans sharing, stories and being vulnerable. That's what is the great thrill of acting.
So there will be animators, right? There will be the sound people, you know what I mean? Like there will be the tech people that was their passion. But I think directors and writers, their passion will still be the human experience, and at least for the next few years. But what we need to realize, one of the things the guy said was 10 years from now, a kid might just go on his phone and say, make a movie about my cat.
Right.
And so they will be trained into this world. So their inspiration will come from this world. And I guess there's always a niche market. I mean, not everyone is a Shakespeare fan, right? And but there's still Shakespeare in the park. Yeah. There's still Shakespeare around the world. I think even Brie Larson is in something I saw in London where it's like an old Greek play. So this stuff will exist. But I mean, I guess we'll need our Brie Larsons to
well, that's it,
to make it popular.
That's the thing in an industry that's already very, I think, stretched at the seams as far as what we can, the amount of work that's available. Something like AI to limit that even further could be quite devastating to a great bulk of that kind of artistic working class, as we say. Yeah,
and the voice stuff, because it can sound so... I just wonder, my own experience in voice, especially because a lot of it's comedic, and I don't want to sound so naive, there's probably a data guy, I can make this funnier. There is the magic of ad-libbing,
right.
And that... A computer can only ad-lib what is when you say to the computer, give me the best jokes, well, it's giving you the average. Whereas, I mean, even from my own comedic background, sometimes what's the funniest is the complete surprise of, thermodynamics, I can kill a non-funny joke too.
I was going to say.
Can computers do that? I don't think so. Computer would be like, did not work first time, do not go back. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going to that well.
I'm ready to home.
Dig. Let's see AI do that. Let's see AI fail and keep going. That's my challenge for AI. But anyways, that's it's huge. It's scary, but I mean, it is exciting. That I'm really interested to see when we get sitting across the table from the other side, what will be their arms crossed. And then what will be like, yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So again, I guess let's just take it back very simply for the membership. When you speak sitting across from who are we sitting across from? That's actually a good question.
I mean,
what are you bargaining with?
That's not a question for me. I'm assuming it's producers. I mean, but I will happily say, cut to Guggen right now. Okay, well, it's the CMPA, the Canadian Media Producers Association. They throw very good soccer parties, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're really, really into that. And the AQPM, the Association Québécoise de la Production Médiatique, they were like, can we find an acronym that is difficult in both languages to remember? And they succeeded. Yeah. So that's who we're bargaining with. From what I understand, it's a group of producers. I mean, I know there's other people in this. There are also American producers that will be there at the table because we have a lot of American production in Canada. the big budget stuff usually comes from America. The Canadian stuff, one of the things we have to think about is even if we're putting in these rules, are we making the rules inaccessible to a Canadian production? So are we slowing down our own industry by saying, well, we want to get paid this much, but they're like, we can't afford it. You've probably had friends like say to you, can you do this?
Yeah.
I'll give you a sandwich. And you're like, no, I'm beyond sandwich pay right now. But if you really know that person and you know that the project is like worthwhile,
Surely.
You're like, yeah, no, I want to be involved in that. That sounds cool. So that's who, I mean, it's the other side. It's in the end, I was involved in bargaining back in like roughly 2007, 2008 in the commercial world.
So we bargain
every 3 years. Yeah. Unless it's a leap year. No, it doesn't matter. It'd be weird. Just everyone's like, what year is it now? Is it 3? It's poor guy. But like, the other side isn't so. I think I don't want to use the word enemy. It can feel that way sometimes, like we're fighting them. It's like we're usually pretty close because everyone wants to keep working.
Of course.
Everyone's kind of, it's like that uncle that you're annoyed with. And you're like, we both like hockey.
Yeah.
Can we just stop fighting over if the Leafs are going to win the cup or not? You know what I mean? They're not. Unless AI can help.
There you go.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, so we are close on a lot of I don't want to, but like issues, for lack of a better term. We're close on a lot of thoughts and processes that make these films and television shows move forward.
Right.
And then you tend to find, this is where we're a little too far apart. Or this is where we're really far apart. And that's why I think something like AI is interesting, because we've never talked about where we're at before.
Yeah.
So we don't, it's like cricket. I'm going to use bad sports analogies, but like we can talk hockey.
Yeah.
But now cricket's on the table and we're like,
yeah, it's unknown territory.
How did they score it? Is it 6 runs? Why do they keep running back and forth? You know? So we'll just have to see where they're coming from there.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think that will be a very interesting conversation, and definitely look forward to hearing more about the process as it goes on. Paul, this has been a very encouraging conversation. I must say, I really appreciate the hope and the optimism that you're bringing to a lot of this stuff. I think that's very useful for our membership.
Yeah.
You know, are there any final thoughts, any things particularly personal to you that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, it's being on council, I got into this really to go back to this idea of the lockout. I lost my job because of a lockout.
So many of us.
But since arriving here and being part of the bargaining team and being part of other, we have committees and so on and so forth, and just seeing all the different points of view, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm enjoying my own education this last year into this. I am somewhat hopeful going into bargaining, because we just did have the SAG-AFTRA strike, that they want to avoid another strike. I feel like that is probably on, I know for us, but Regis strike mandates, so, you know, it is a powerful tool.
Yes.
And I don't want to just say, well, that guy said we weren't going to do it. I'm like, we might. But I'm hopeful that we can avoid that, because calmer heads will prevail, and it'll be a struggle at times, but we'll find a way not to stop the industry, to just create a new industry.
Yeah.
Especially with streaming and especially with AI. Those are two very new concepts that I am hopeful. But, you know, if like around American Thanksgiving, I'm grayer than I used to be.
We know why.
We'll know why. Or all the poutine, because we're negotiating in
that as well.
Montreal, yeah.
Well, from my part, so appreciative of what you do, all the hard work that you put in, and fighting the good fight for us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Paul, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for being real with us, and we hope to catch you on another one.
Do I look good against Asante? Like, did they have to find the most handsome host? Like, was like, I'm trying to think of, like, was Gary Busey not available?
No comment. No comment. No further comment. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Reel Talk. Please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, and follow us on wherever you get your favorite podcast.